The day I buried my husband, his father tried to bury me too. Rain had followed us from the church to the cemetery, thin and cold, the kind that settles into your clothes and stays there. I remember standing beside the fresh earth, holding a white rose so tightly the thorns pressed into my palm. Daniel was gone. My husband, my best friend, the only person who ever made the world feel steady. 36 years old, a sudden accident. One phone call had shattered an entire future. I barely heard the condolences around me. Faces blurred, voices drifted in and out like distant radio static. I only felt numbness. When everyone began leaving, I stayed behind for one more minute. I knelt beside the grave and whispered, "I don't know how to do this without you." Then I heard a voice behind me. "You won't have to do much for long." I turned slowly. My father-in-law, Harold, stood beneath a black umbrella. His expression was dry, controlled, almost impatient. Beside him stood Daniel's older sister, Monica, arms folded tightly across her coat. I wiped my tears. "What do you mean?" Harold adjusted his gloves. "The house," he said plainly. "You'll need to be out by the end of the month." At first, I thought grief had made me hear wrong. "I'm sorry? Our family property reverts to blood family now that Daniel has passed. You have no children, no direct line. It's only proper." I stared at him, unable to breathe. The house, the home Daniel and I had built together for 8 years, the kitchen we renovated ourselves, the garden he planted, the bedroom where we made plans for children we were still hoping for. Monica finally spoke. "We're trying to be civil, Claire. Don't make this ugly." Ugly. My husband's grave was still wet behind us. I felt something inside me go still. "I'm going home," I said quietly. Harold nodded once. "Enjoy your last weeks there." I walked away because if I stayed another second, grief might have turned into something louder. That night, I sat alone in our living room, surrounded by framed memories and silence. Daniel's sweater still hung over the chair. His book was open on page 73. His coffee mug remained by the sink. Everything in that house still believed he was coming back. I opened the drawer where we kept important papers, searching through insurance forms and warranties with shaking hands. Then I found an envelope, my name written in Daniel's handwriting. Inside was a note. "If anything ever happens to me, trust what we planned. Don't let anyone intimidate you. I know my family." My tears fell onto the page. What did he know? What had he prepared? But what I didn't know that night was that the people trying to throw me out had already made one fatal mistake. They assumed grief had made me weak. They forgot grief can also make a woman fearless. The next morning, Harold arrived at the house without warning. He walked in using an old spare key Daniel had forgotten to collect years ago. Monica followed carrying cardboard boxes. I stood from the dining table in disbelief. "What are you doing?" "Helping move things along. You should be grateful." Monica picked up one of my wedding photo frames and placed it in a box. My chest tightened. "Put that down." She smirked. "Legally, this all belongs to family now." I took the frame from her hands. "I am family." Neither of them answered. That silence told me everything. To them, I had only mattered while Daniel was alive. I changed the locks that afternoon. Then I called the lawyer whose number Daniel had written on the back of the envelope. Her name was Evelyn Ross. Calm voice, sharp mind, no wasted words. After hearing everything, she said, "Come to my office immediately. Bring all documents." I arrived carrying folders and pain. She reviewed the deed first. Then she looked up and smiled slightly. "Well," she said, "this changes everything." My pulse quickened. "What?" "The property is jointly owned with survivorship rights. It passes directly to you." I stared at her. "They said—" "They lied," she interrupted gently, "or they hoped you wouldn't know better." My hands began to shake. Not from fear this time, from clarity. Evelyn continued sorting through papers. Then she found another document, a trust. Daniel had quietly created an investment trust 2 years earlier, naming me sole beneficiary and executor of certain family business shares he personally owned. I blinked at her. He never told me. He likely planned to, she said. Some people postpone hard conversations because they expect more time. Those words pierced me. More time. We all live like tomorrow signed a contract with us. Then Evelyn looked directly at me. Claire, your father-in-law has no claim to your home, and if he pressures you further, we respond formally. For the first time since the funeral, I inhaled fully. Still, the betrayal hurt more deeply than the legal threat. Harold had watched me bury his son, then tried to steal my shelter before the flowers wilted. That kind of cruelty doesn't appear overnight. It waits for opportunity. Over the next week, they escalated. Letters arrived demanding possession. Monica posted vague comments online about outsiders taking family wealth. Harold called relatives, painting himself as a grieving father mistreated by a cold widow. I said nothing publicly. Truth does not need to shout while lies exhaust themselves. Instead, Evelyn prepared everything: certified copies of the deed, cease and desist notices, records of harassment, a meeting request from the family company board where Daniel's shares now mattered more than Harold realized. Until everything changed, because Harold thought he was removing me from the house. He never imagined I now held the vote that could remove him from the company, and justice was about to arrive wearing heels and carrying paperwork. The board meeting was held 10 days later. Harold entered confidently, wearing authority like an old coat. He barely glanced at me. Monica sat beside him, whispering smugly. Then Evelyn placed documents before every board member: ownership transfers, trust instructions, share certificates, board bylaws. The room became very quiet. Harold's expression shifted first to confusion, then disbelief. "This is nonsense," he said sharply. Evelyn remained calm. "It is legally executed, properly filed, and fully enforceable." I finally spoke. "Daniel trusted me." Harold leaned forward. "You manipulated my son." "No," I said softly. "You underestimated him." The chairman cleared his throat. "With these shares now controlled by Mrs. Carter, the board must also address recent complaints regarding coercive conduct and misuse of company resources." Harold's face drained of color. Monica whispered, "Dad." An internal review had already begun. Evidence of personal expenses charged to the company, pressure tactics against employees, years of behavior people tolerated because no one challenged him. Power survives through silence. I had ended the silence. By unanimous temporary vote, Harold was suspended pending investigation. He stood abruptly. "You planned this." I looked at him steadily. "You planned to evict your son's widow after his funeral." No one defended him. That was the loudest part of the room. Weeks later, the investigation became permanent removal. Harold lost his position, reputation, and the control he worshipped more than family. Monica disappeared the moment status did. As for the house, I stayed. I repainted the living room Daniel always wanted lighter. I finished the garden he started. I donated old bitterness room by room. One evening, I opened the last sealed box of Daniel's things. Inside was another note: "If they ever show you who they are, believe them, then keep living beautifully." I cried harder than I had at the funeral, not because of pain, because love had reached me again. Months passed. I started volunteering with a grief support group. I met others carrying impossible mornings and empty chairs. We healed by speaking truths softly. People sometimes ask if revenge made me happy. No, revenge is too small a word. What happened was accountability, and then freedom, because the greatest victory is not watching cruel people fall.
It is refusing to fall with them. I still miss Daniel every day. Some losses never leave. They simply learn to sit quietly beside you. But I also learned this. Family is not blood that demands. Family is love that protects. And anyone who tries to take your home in your darkest hour deserves to lose the place they built inside everyone else's trust.